Welcome to the HindmanCast, a podcast of the Hymen Settlement School, where we explore the history, culture, and people that make the Hymen Settlement School what it is today, and how this historic institution will continue to serve its mission of celebrating heritage and changing lives in Central Appalachia. I'm Corey Terry.
And I'm Jordan Collins.
And welcome to episode number 12 of the HindmanCast. And Jordan, we've moved up in the world today.
I don't feel that way.
You don't feel that way?
You know, some days, yeah, but not today.
Well, I think we have moved up. We have moved up in our location of our podcasting.
I think literally we have. We're about 20 feet higher than we usually are.
That is true as well. But we have moved up from the Uncle Saul's cabin into the Maystone gathering place today to do our podcast recording. Jordan and Sarah Kate had a little office transition going on there, and she kicked us out. She's like, "You can't do this podcast here. This is my space now." So
fine with me.
Fine with me.
We got this big upgrade.
We got an upgrade.
Kept Lois's table though, because it's a classic.
Yep, Lois Matus table. Gotta love it. Gotta love it. Well, we have a long overdue episode for you today, and we are excited to welcome Mr. Randy Wilson to the HindmanCast today. Randy Wilson served at the Hymen Settlement School for over 2 decades as the Folk Arts Program Director, providing arts education to schools in Knott County. And on top of his work here at the Settlement School, Randy is also an accomplished songwriter, performer, storyteller, and dance caller. Randy Wilson, welcome to the show.
It's good to be here. Beautiful day.
Yes, it is. It's a beautiful day, and I've been wanting to get you on the podcast for a long time now, but we just haven't worked it out. But glad to have you here today. Jordan, what we always do with our guests is we like to get a little bit of the origin story, right?
Oh, yeah, the origin story. If you watch the podcast, you know what that means.
Yeah.
To all of our regulars.
So, Randy, what we like to do with everybody is just kind of get a little bit about your life growing up, where you were born and those sorts of things, your education, anything of that sort you want to share with us.
All right. Well, I'm a fifth generation Eastern Kentuckian, and so it goes back pretty far. I came over the gap soon after Daniel Boone, and I was born on a Redbird River, though, at the head of the Redbird River, at the Redbird Mission Hospital, and it's a little old frontier hospital up the Redbird. And so it's at the corner of Bell and Leslie and Clay County. So, but my home was over in Leslie County, up in Big Branch, Kentucky. I don't know how many big branches there are in Eastern Kentucky, but
there's one here in Knott County.
This is the one Big Branch. Yeah, there's a lot of big branches. So I grew up there, and it was one of those places. You know, all the kinfolk were pretty close around there. I had Mama right down the road with Papa, and then my dad, Mom up the road, and folks all around who were related. But I sort of, but we grew out. I grew up in Corbin, Kentucky, so we moved out of the holler when I was really young, and but it sure left an impression because I guess I left young, like I hadn't really completed something there, you know. So my dad followed the railroads to Corbin, Kentucky, and he worked railroad there, and there I grew up and played a lot of ball, but for some reason I got picked up a guitar, and it was in high school. And we were having a basketball season. It was pretty rough. We were 5-20, I think,
wow.
And I had to get my mind off of it.
Sounds like UK right now.
So I went down to the Western Auto. It's it's an auto store, but they had guitars, and I picked up a guitar, and they was kind of surprised to family. And my dad, I walked by me struggling guitar, and he said, "That won't last long." Motivation. But, it is really, it doesn't last long unless you really just got, you just got an urge to play it. You just can't let it go. That's what a musician is like. They just can't can't stop, So I just kept fooling around with it and started picking up stuff. And then when I graduated from college, a friend gave me a banjo. And at that time, I was sick. I had mononucleosis.
Oh, wow.
So I was really laid out, but I could pick up a banjo, and I started playing banjo. And then after that, I started looking up these old-time musicians in the family on the creek, on Big Branch. I started going back there. And in eastern Kentucky, I went to Lee Boy Sexton's house. I found him, and right at the end of Dead End Road, right up there on Line Fork. And he taught me, I remember the first tune he taught me was Whoa, Mule, Whoa. That was one of his signature tunes.
I've heard that one.
Yeah, and he taught me that Whoa, Mule, Whoa. And, when he taught me that, he said, now I want you to give me some credit when you play this song, because these guys came down from New York City, and I think he said they were Cohen, were their names, brothers, and I taught them a lot of tunes, and I went in a music store not long after that, and had an album out, and there was all those tunes that I taught them, and they didn't say a word about me in the liner notes. Of course, they were all public domain. They weren't his tunes, but there were tunes that he taught them. So I said, yeah, I'll sure do that. And he really got me started looking at these different musicians, banjo players in eastern Kentucky. But, I guess the main influence was going during college. I went back, I saw Courier Journal was a state paper then, and I saw an article about Joe Begley and Blackie, Kentucky, and C.B. Cottle's store. And Joe and Gaynell ran that store, and so I just took off one weekend and landed on the store. At the store, they had a porch out there, and there was Austin Miller playing. He'd come down, just play on the porch. And I remember his foot thubbing against that porch floor and him playing. He played a two-finger style. And then I went up to Carcassonne, that dance up there. Well, I went to Center College, and we had the arts. They had a grand, big art building there with, a big seating capacity, performance stage.
Isn't one of their buildings designed by Frank
Lloyd
Wright?
I don't know.
Because there's no right angles in it or something. They bragged about
that building, I don't think it does have a right angle. But they have a performance venue there, and I thought of art, of culture. We were well cultured. Then I went up to Carcassonne, that little one-room school where they danced, and I thought, this is culture, because this is people. They're the mothers and fathers and all the children and grandparents and everybody there dancing together. And it was a living culture. And I thought, the way I lived, I had moved to I lived on the edge of the woods, which was good, but it was sort of suburbia. And I thought, this compared to what is culture in a suburb, I didn't see a whole lot of culture happening there. But here was something real and participatory. And there was music, there was Lee Boy playing, and the band with him. So I was really hooked from then on. I went as often as I could to the dance and learned how they called dances and that kind of thing. But, I was just thinking, Austin Miller, I recorded him when I was there. I had just had a little reel-to-reel, and I found it later. I found it, and I thought, man, I didn't know what I was listening to. I wish I'd, sit down and I still have a recording, but I just cannot figure out what he's doing. And so I'm going to try to pass it around to people and say, show me how is he doing this? And I don't know if I can find anybody. But I still have that recording. And I had an uncle named Andrew Jackson, not the president Andrew, but named after him probably. And he played old style. And again, I didn't know what I was listening to, but I recorded it, and then I started listening to it recently, and it's different. It was a different way of playing. He played Pretty Polly. Of course, that's kind of an iconic tune in the mountains. And he played. He wouldn't play the melody. He would sing a part of it, and then play a little riff on it, and then he'd sing a little more of the melody and then play a little riff, which was a lot different than we usually think that you sing the melody and you play it at the same time.
Did you do a video about that?
No,
I
just
remember watching a video of you doing Pretty Polly.
Yes, I did Pretty Polly. I did, yeah, and put it on YouTube and tried to emulate what he was doing with that.
Let's get you a plug right now, Randy. What video do they go to see that?
Where do we find your YouTube channel?
Oh, I don't know to see that. Yeah, you can look up Randy Wilson, Pretty Polly, I guess, on a YouTube channel. Yeah, you can do that.
And we'll be sure to link that in our show notes as well. If you're interested in finding that.
What are here?
So when you were growing up, I know you said you picked up the guitar just kind of at random. Was anybody, and some of your members of your family played music, but was that like a part of your life at all, or was it
No, they didn't play. My mother sang in the choir, and that was it. My dad, he didn't. He used to sing in choir, kind of singing groups, gospel group at church, but I never did hear him sing, really.
And
like I moved off the creek when I was about 4 or 5, and so I didn't hear. Like I went back, there was a guy named Marcus Howard on the creek, and he showed me a few things. So I didn't know that, and I had an uncle named Woodrow, another Woodrow Wilson,
another president,
and he played. They told me he played, but by the time I got to him, he quit playing. So I just went around and started learning from these mountain musicians and others. I went to start going to festivals and picking up things and workshops, and it's been a lot of fun to learn.
Did you ever learn from the Osborne brothers? You're from Leslie County.
Oh, the Osborne brothers, yeah. Well, yeah, they sort of, no, I didn't ever learn. I think he plays bluegrass with the finger picks, though. I've never seen them play the old time. Probably can. Most of them can play both ways with the picks and bluegrass and with a knockdown style. But no, I never did learn, never did go. They were on the road, at that time. They were pretty famous, and they were making albums, and they were in Nashville a lot, and they were on the road.
Yeah,
Osborne brothers, they're from Leslie County.
Yeah, I remember going to the festival every year, and it was like the biggest thing in Leslie County.
Yeah.
So tell us a little bit about what led you to the Hymen Settlement School and how that came to be.
Well, the folk week, the family folk week went on here for, 25, 30, maybe.
I think it started late 70s, just like the Writers' Workshop.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I started coming over here and hanging out with people, and so I just started coming back, and then I got a job with the Kentucky Arts Council in their artist in residence program, where they came into schools, and so I started that in Leslie County. I sold them on that idea, and I started in Leslie County doing music and stories and dance in the school system. And then I was over here for Folk Week. I started performing for it. And then I started going in between Leslie County and Knott County doing the gigs here and there with in the schools. So we, Mike Mullins was really helpful. We just went from grant to grant, by the seat of our pants for a long time. Until he finally found a benefactor, who endowed the position, so in perpetuity. So they would always have it. Of course, there's a long history of that here, with the music and the arts and the folk arts, from the initial inception of the school, from ladies, May Stone, Catherine Pettit, they really valued native crafts and arts, and they had that Cecil Sharp, in 1917, come here. Mm-hmm. He was interested in getting that sound of traditional music that came from the British Isles. He felt like the Industrial Revolution in England was destroying the traditional music scene, because he felt that it was the peasants who really kept the traditions alive, that they had it in their home and in their communities, and he thought that the urbanization of the people and the industrial movement of people, people moving for jobs, would destroy the music. So he was looking for it in its purified form, and with, quote, peasants.
Yeah, that seems classist.
Yeah,
but,
it is. So he was looking for some peasants. So he came to
Hymen.
And he did have it was remarkable. And he notated it, of course. He didn't have the recording stuff.
Yeah.
And he said he got tons of stuff here. I had people lined up coming in, to Hymen to sing for him. He was pretty wowed by the whole situation.
I remember reading something about him and him just being baffled about the amount of lard that people use.
Oh, the lard. Yeah, I remembered. He said they can't cook anything without lard.
Makes it taste better.
Yeah.
He was a pretty good writer. I wish I had that quote, but you'd have to look it up. And he had a time here, He came during the fall of the year, and it was the goldenrods were in bloom, and they had the hall. He was famous, and they had the hall festooned with goldenrods. He had allergy problems. He walked in that room and he just went convulsed, So not a good start, but he did. He made the rounds of these old ballads, and songs. Yeah. So with him, and then you had the McLean family here, and you had a lot of people, great musicians here in the county.
So you talked a lot about, your kind of journey with traditional arts. Why do you believe teaching kids traditional arts is important, and why did you devote your life to teaching these kids Appalachian stories, music, and dance?
Well, just wanted to connect them with the roots, feel rooted in something, because I felt rooted in it, wanted to share that. And they didn't really have a whole lot of singing in the schools. Leslie County didn't have a singing teacher. So just that kind of enrichment was not here, and the stories and the dance part of it, I just didn't have anything, in Leslie or Knott County or anywhere in Eastern Kentucky, for as I could see.
Yeah, they were kind of stripping the curriculum out,
right?
The art.
And it just, I think it just enlivened people's imaginations and curiosity. And they would say, one of the parents said, Mr. Wilson's at school today. I think I'll go to school today. So, if people, makes you want to go to school and enlivens your experience there. So I think that was a major reason for it. But people here, as far as the music, they had it a lot in their homes, and so something was being passed on. It's really musically rich in Eastern Kentucky. So many, you think of all the country musicians and bluegrass people that came out of here and made it big. It's a high proportion of it. And one time I was in a classroom. They had some visitors from Atlanta, Georgia there. And so I just wanted to see, I said to they're like fourth graders, I said, how many of you have people in your family who actually play an instrument? And more than half of them had. But that person from Atlanta just looked and was really surprised that that many really played instruments in the culture. So it's still something very alive. So you got country music, you got bluegrass, you got different forms of rock and roll here, and so there's a variety of musical things going on. But this particular kind of music, it was, it was a lot of fun. It was accessible to young minds, and we could be creative with it as well. So it made for a good experience. And we always made a cassette album at that time. We had projects. There was always a project because I really believe learned a lot from Foxfire, that whole experiment in education in North Georgia, that they really try to base it in the student experience and in the hands-on kind of project that they would have at the end of an experience. So we did a lot of oral histories, and we did a lot of recording songs, and we would play with the songs and write songs and have their voices. They love to hear their own voices, So those, I just run into people that have those and pass them on. It was something they could listen to in the car and at home, so they could pass it on to their siblings, and those things kind of made the rounds here, I think.
Yeah, I know for several years there, I got a CD for a Christmas present every year from you.
Yeah,
One of the CDs you produced.
Yeah, we did. I loved doing that, and we produced them for them and also for WYMT. I'm sorry, WMMT.
Too many W's and M's.
Yeah, too many W's and M's. But we did that for years, for 20 years. So we produced a kids radio program. Stories, oral histories, songs.
So outside of your teaching capacity, I know you did a lot of things with Mr. Steele. Could you talk to us a little bit about kind of what you all did together and your relationship with him?
We Mr. Steele, he came here in the Depression years in the 30s and just looking for a place to lay his head. He had a doctorate degree, but he couldn't find work, and he rode the rails. He said he slept in lumber yards and on graveyards, and he said he'd go back home and stay for a while, but he felt so ashamed that he had nothing, that he'd head out again. So he heard about the settlement school, and they gave him a position, a librarian, and he packed books around in his car for people, and so he started at that here, and it was kind of a lifesaver for him. He didn't know what to do, so he was writing. He was writing a novel, River of Earth, here, and he took up in a log home out on Bergey's Creek. He was writing and librarian work here, and he wrote poems. He's got several published books of poetry, and they call him the Dean of Appalachian Literature because he'd been at it so long, and he'd been published widely through that. He said that he went to LMU, Lincoln Memorial University. You look at the LMU annual, and you see Jesse Stewart on one side of the page and James Steele on the other in the LMU. Jesse Stewart, famous writer, and so that he was there with Jesse Stewart, and Mr. Steele, his job there was to clean the library in the evening. So he said he would get his work done, and then he'd start reading. And they'd find him there with periodicals and stuff laid over top of him in the morning. They'd find him with all this stuff. But he was reading. He had all these periodicals of the day. The Atlantic and different, the Virginia Quarterly. There was a bunch of them, and he said it was like he was picking a lock to how to get published. He would watch and make a study of what they were looking for in those periodicals, and then he would try to accommodate them when he had something to give. So he was pretty astute, but he was poor as Job's turkey, as they say. He said, I said, "What do you remember from LMU?" He said, "I was hungry." He said, "We went out in the woods and we got walnuts and hickory nuts and whatever we could find." It was hard times there. So, but he went from there to Vanderbilt, and there he's in the agrarian movement. There's writers' movement, back to the earth kind of thing, and then he was just searching. And what did he say? He got a doctorate, and he said he got his master's degree and his doctorate in the same shoes. He never did have a lot to buy a lot of clothes, and he had a benefactor too there to pay his way at LMU. So he finally found this place, and he made it a home, and he started writing and publishing from here. But the other writer from here, another writer from here, really helped him a lot. Help me with his name. I can't think of his name.
Talking about Albert Stewart?
Albert Stewart, yeah.
Look at you, Corey.
That's
I
good.
know my settlement school people.
Yeah. Albert Stewart. He's kind of unsung. He's a good writer. He's a great writer, but he's kind of unsung next to Mr. Steele.
Yeah.
I heard somebody over on Apple Shop say, "Well, you heard a story about Mr. Steele and Albert Stewart driving on the road out 80, and they come alongside each other, and they looked at each other and both floored it to see who could drive the fastest." Of course, that's probably not true, but there was competition there. But Mr. Steele got in the hard way, and Albert got him a job at Morehead State University, and he taught there. And he taught so many writers that come out of there. Wendell Berry, was his protege. Wendell Berry would take stuff to Mr. Steele and share it. Mr. Steele would say at one point, Mr. Steele said, "Don't take this to anybody. You publish it." So he said. So it was really an encouragement to Wendell to start publishing. Mr. Steele was afraid somebody would steal his thoughts or ideas. He said, "Don't take." So he really let him go. To do his own work. But he was here, and he had a log house out on Burgess Creek, and he was in his 80s, and he really wanted to get out there with his work. He was not a recluse. He wasn't a hermit. He traveled a lot. He went to Cuba many times. He went down to the Yucatan Peninsula.
Hey, I've been there.
To look at the archaeological work down there, but he wanted to have his work in the public more, and so people started wanting him to read his work, and then I saw that he had somebody did his River of Earth piece, the central piece of that, which is a sermon, like by old regular Baptist, and it's something like, "Where are we going on this River of Earth? The dead and the living riding the waters," that kind of thing. I could remember it. I'd have to take a little time, but he has this great sermon that's really central to that book, and it's something that you wouldn't think of a regular Baptist doing. It's you'd have to read it to understand. But he had that piece there. It came from the Bible. So I was born in a ridge pocket. I never saw the sunball without hoisting my chin. My eyes were sought upon the mountains from the beginning till I read in a good book here. They go running and skipping like sheep. That's pretty good. So he read from the Bible where, you know, the hills skip like rams and the little ones like little lambs. You know, it's a really great imagery. You can just see the rise and fall of those mountains. So he had that in the middle of that book, and they had a piece done on radio on not radio, on TV. KET did a piece on it and had somebody do that sermon. And I watched it and I said, no, it sounds like a Presbyterian. It's too rational, you know. Delivery. It needs to sound like somebody with some emotion, you know, like a regular Baptist. So, and then I was doing a lot of oral history and reading pieces from folk tales and folk remembrances. And there was one, Bascom Lamar Lunsford. He's from Asheville area in North Carolina. He had this sermon. It's a funny sermon because the guy's at Brush Harbor meeting, and it's a guy on a river boat who's, you know, he's got a boat full of wheat and rye, and he said, and as fine a Monongahela whiskey as ever was drunk, and he stopped for a revival service on the banks of the Ohio or some river, and he gets off and he's making stuff up. And he makes it. He said, I am a hard-shelled Baptist preacher, you no doubt heard before, and I've come to expand the scriptures and point out a narrow way that leads from a vain world to the streets of Jerusalem. And I've chosen for my text somewhere in the leads of the Bible between 2 Chronicles and 2 Chronicles. And if you find it, you'll see these words therein. They shall gnaw a file and flee to the mountains of Hepzibah, where the lion roareth and the whangdoodle mourneth its firstborn.
Oh, we jumped right in the middle of a sermon right there.
And the whangdoodle mourneth its firstborn. So it has this whole thing that I memorized, and we were in line to eat, and I just launched into it. And we sat down, and Mr. Steele said, I need you to do this sermon for me in my book. So that's when we started collaborating, you know. So I did his sermon, and then we started thinking of songs to do, and so we traveled a lot together, and we just played everywhere. He was really anxious to do it. He was in his late 80s, but he really wanted to do it, and we found a good rhythm. Well, you know, it's really perfect for poetry. You have somebody setting it up with some music. We go through some music for it, and so we recorded it at the Apple Shop, and we did University of Kentucky, we did Virginia Tech, we did colleges, and just here in Yon, and we went to Italy together with a group of people, and we did it there in Rome, University of Rome, and we did the piece there. So we were downtown, and they had this social function, a dinner, and they had professors and people, and it was a kind of a Renaissance building downtown, big, large building, and they wanted us to do a piece of our set, you know, for it. So, you know, I was going to do this sermon. I knew this was, you know, something that they probably never did hear before. So I saw the MC. I said, now, look, you got to, you know, we're going to get up to do this. And you got to warn these people that this is something different, you know, because I'm going to really start shouting, hollering. And he said, yeah, yes, very good, very good. And then I noticed he was nervous, and I know he's not going to remember that. And he didn't. So I got up in the middle, and I started, where are we going on this mighty river of earth, a born and a begetting and a dying, the living and the dead, riding the waters. Where are it sweeping us? And these people, they straightened up in their chairs, looked over there. And so I just, did it for all of its worth. And afterward, I said to one of the people that was with us, I said, well, what did you think of the sermon? They said, oh, bellissimo, bellissimo. And I said, well, did you understand any of it? Not a word. Not a word.
That's hilarious.
So we had a good run, and it was the best part. We had something down that we did, and the only thing he asked me what he should something that he could do to help out. And I said, well, you're smacking your lips while I'm playing. That's the only thing. Just don't smack your lips, because I'd be playing. It's just a tick, he'd be up there with the mic. He'd go.
I feel I do that sometimes.
I mean, my wife gets on to me all the time for doing that when I eat. So.
Oh, yeah. So that was the only thing. So we had a routine, but the best part was riding with him, really, and driving for him and listening to his stories. I wrote them all down in a journal, or as many as I could remember. And I don't know if they're any different than anybody else heard, but I wrote them all down and put them in a journal to remember him and to have other people read, and see what it was like. Yeah. That was a pretty good run.
Awesome. So, what would you say is one of your most memorable stories from your time here at the settlement school? Whether it's in the schools or maybe going around with Mr. Steele or whatever.
Something that hit me all the time. People ask that. I did everything. We did theater. We did radio theater. It's really hard to do theater. I mean, you have to have time to block things off and to have the visual parts of that. But for me, my time in the school to do radio theater, and we would write them together, and that was a lot of fun. And we could, you could have voices, and them take different voices and come up with something, very short. We call them, what do we call them? Snapshots from the edge or something like that, pictures or photos from the edge, just little pieces. But we did some, we were doing this improvisation, So I'd give them a situation, and they would be different people in the situation, and just practice just make it up, there's no lines, you just made it up.
We should try that out.
No, I cannot improv at all.
Oh, come on, I'm sure you can. I'm sure you got some characters down deep in there.
Jim Bob Cooter.
That's an alter ego.
That's my alter ego. So.
Okay, that's good.
You just gave them away here.
Oh wait, yeah, I should have said that.
You have to be doing something for Jim Bob Cooter. That's a good name.
It's a real person.
Oh, well.
Based on a real person's name.
Yeah, you've known him since high school.
You better watch about that.
Yeah. Nah, he's like a football coach. Somewhere.
Oh, yeah.
He's okay.
Well, we could do coaches, yeah. It reminds me, in high school, I had a coach who taught typing, and I just wondered about them. I had some coaches, good teachers. Others, they're just there,
Yeah. Yeah.
So we had a typing teacher who's a coach. So we'd walk in, typing class, and we'd sit down. And this was it. Turn to page 34. Read it. Type.
Was he a drill sergeant?
Yeah, it was like being out of practice,
Yeah.
Ready. Type. We just rattle away until the bell rang.
I had a teacher like that in my high school. He was a football coach, taught English. He probably knows who he is, but you sat in his class, you didn't do nothing the entire time.
Oh, gosh.
Because they had to teach a course if they were going to coach.
I know. Well, usually are health and PE. But so we were there doing improv in fourth grade. So I said, okay. we had some kids up there, and they like performing for the class, just making up stuff. Okay, I said, okay, you're a kid, a teenager. You come home, and you've borrowed your parents' car, and there's a dent in the car. Okay, I said, I pointed one. You're the teenager, and you're the parent, and I said, you start. The parent starts, and he didn't say anything. I said, go on. You're the parent. He just looked at me kind of funny. Didn't say nothing. I said, go ahead, just say anything. You're the parent. He went, brock, brock, bump, bump. No, brock, brock, did. And I looked, I thought, no, not parent, parent.
God.
And we all fell out laughing. He thought he was supposed to be a parent. That's the one I remember when anybody asked me about that kind of thing. But we did have a guy, a fella, he was a turner, and he had a hard time coming to school. He was out coon hunting a lot, overnight, But I got him in there doing oral history, Coon Hunter's Notebook. And, God, man, you just turned on the recorder. He was off. You didn't have, just turn it on, and he would go into it. He knew everything about coon hunting. And I taught him banjo, and it really helped him come to school, But he could tell you anything about coon hunting or cleaning it up and making a coon skin hat. And he was really really good storyteller, and people just really loved to listen to the Coon Hunter's Notebook.
We should do more of that. Get the kids inspired, have them find something they like instead of just being like, sit down, read Beowulf for 2 hours.
Well, some of them are real storytellers, and some do better, thinking about and writing. Some that we wrote a lot of scripts out, and they would we would do it together. And I'd write it out on the board. I'd get ideas from here and yon. And this is about the timing I had in a classroom, how we can put this together. And, we would put dialogues together. And they were a lot of fun to put together, just wild stuff, that they would think of. Trying to think of any right now. Might be memorable. There's so many. I remember one. I just flashed on something. That it was a house at the end of the holler, and there were just so many sounds in the. They would hear every now and then. They'd hear their little brother go. Bob the Builder, can you fix it? Bob the Builder, yes, you can. And just throw everything in there, about the experience of trying to get in the bathroom in the morning when the brothers and sisters are trying to get in, and just a kind of melee of conversations that go on.
I feel like we could write that about us trying to get in the bathroom in the mornings because everyone's got their schedules all together.
Yeah. Yeah, that was fun to put those, and we had recordings of those theater pieces. I called it Postcards from the Edge. That's what we called it. And we put those together, and they take those. We made copies for everybody in the classroom, and they take them and listen to them. And we used some for WMMT as well.
So you talked a lot about, what you did while you're with the school, what you did with Mr. Still. What's Randy up to these days, during retirement?
Well, just trying to figure that out. Really, through all these years, of course, I wrote a lot of songs, but I just seldom did them I did some of them in the classroom, but I never did have a focus. So I thought, I got all this stuff here. I was going to try to focus on my own pieces. So I started putting together. I just recorded a bunch of them, and then I started putting them on YouTube and on the Facebook sites, and see if I get some kind of following, and when maybe things open up again, I can perform these. But I also did a lot of stuff with foraging and spring greens and the medicinals, herbals, and started doing a lot of research on trees, and so
I meant to go on your hike last year with the tutors, but
so we took kids. It was hard. It was hard to do. A lot of these schools, the situation, you can't really take them out. That's fenced in, and it's hard to get out to where we want to go. But some of them you can. So I did that with students, and continue to be interested in that. Really, because Wendell Berry, Wendell's at a meeting I was in, he said every school should have a field biology. I mean, he said, what are we doing when we live in an environment and we don't even know anything about it? That we're living in a situation outside. It's all out there. Yeah. And we don't pay any attention at all. And how much learning could go on, hands-on, if you just walked around outside.
Yeah, I mean, I would have loved to have that kind of class.
Yeah.
I'm trying to pick up on that right now. I bought a book, and I'm trying to,
Wasn't there a group come here, or one year, I remember this girl got stung, and then you all, went out and foraged something that, you all rubbed, made a salve with or something, and cured her sting with, and she was amazed.
Oh yeah, yeah. So yeah, and because another reason, I guess Mr. Wendell Berry brought it up, because everybody's looking down at their device. They're not really connected with things close to them. So and it's true. I'm trying to figure out how to do that, because I took a group out into the woods. They complained all the time. They fell down. They didn't know how to walk in the woods. They fell all over the place. Their ankle was hurting them. Something was hurting on them, and there's problems. I mean, I have to think through it. Ticks. Mm-hmm. I don't want to go out and somebody get a tick and get sick. So there's a lot more ticks now than when I was growing up.
Yeah,
and so we started just staying on the pavement. There was plenty right there on the pavement next to the school that we could. So I started making a study of that, and so we're planning on planting some trees, because I read a book. Diana Kroger, Barrister Kroger, I think it's something like that. She's from Ireland, but she did a study. She's a biologist, a chemical tree biologist. She just connects the kind of chemical reactions going on in a tree and how they affect people, and what is the chemical that affects people, and like the herbal, like the medicinals, what's in trees that are medicinal, and so and I recall a little documentary she did in Japan. They call it forest bathing. It's a part of their culture for people to go out in the forest because of the aerosols that are in the forest trees are good for their health. So they have that part of their health regimen to go forest bathing. And she's kind of done all the study, what is it in the air and what is it that affects people that way. And it's like willow trees are supposed to be good for depression. Just, go out under a willow by a stream. And, and there's something helping. And, it's not just, I guess it's the feel of it, but also there's something chemically, she says, that's happening. And there's all this research about what's going on with the trees in the forest, and how they communicate with each other chemically.
The mycelium?
Yeah, mycelium, the root structure. and how they're communicating, and this whole mystery of what's going on, how they feed each other. Like when a tree is dying, it start giving its stuff to other trees.
Yeah, to kind of.
I think I heard like if there's a forest fire, like there's like a network that will start like communicating to this side of the forest to start.
They'll pull the resources.
Yeah, start protecting
like
yourself.
I think it's a fungus.
I don't know. There's some things that can protect. I don't about forest fires. I don't know a whole hell of a lot they can do about that. But there are like some infestations that they can secrete something. I'd have to look, but it's pretty amazing the different ways they can defend themselves. Yeah.
I had a teacher in high school, and she always claimed that trees could talk.
Yeah.
And everyone else looked at her like she was crazy. But then I actually spent some time in the woods, and you can kind of see. You'll see one or two leaves, they'll twirl in a circle. Then you'll see a leaf across twirl in a little circle. No wind. I know I also sound crazy.
Really, yeah. Well, I know they're talking through chemicals. There's chemical reactions going on. And electrical reactions that they're going on, that they're communicating some way. So she said that in order for human life to evolve, trees had to be here. She said that the trees provided the oxygen that allowed mammals, because mammals require a lot of oxygen. They were the foundation for human life. And she pointed out, like, the lack of trees is another, that's kind of making the climate change, happen. The weather patterns are connected to the trees. She gave an example in Japan. They had a big fishing industry, and after they found this out, they said, if you want to catch a fish, plant a tree. Didn't sound like that, but they saw that they just cut everything down next to the coastline in this area in Japan, and the fishing industry just went down. And there's a connection with the nutrients coming out from the flow of those streams from the trees into the ocean that really was making the fishery out of that it was all connected. So she talked about in Ireland, which has the least percentage of trees in all Europe. I mean, they just don't have trees there. I went there, what the hell happened with your trees, man? There was no trees. Plenty of sheep, but no trees. It's all grass. And she was out. She grew up learning. She was adopted into some of the culture, the old culture, Celtic culture of Ireland, and they taught her the ways that were disappearing. And she was out one day, and she asked him. She was saying, where are the trees? And she found out, the British cut them all down.
Doesn't surprise me.
The British for boats, and they went into this clearing thing. They cleared the land of trees and people to grow sheep. They happened in Scotland, happened in Ireland, sheep for shearing, mutton, and they just they found out that Gaelic first meant people of the forest. So they just severed. That was part of the plan, to sever them from their culture. The best way to do it was cut their damn trees down.
Makes sense.
And so the Druids, the people, keepers of knowledge, they had these sacred forests. They cut them down. So they just went after the trees. And so she moved to Canada, and now she's into this thing, that if you want to restore the planet, and plant some trees. So we'd like to try that on some of these strip jobs, mountaintop removal sites. We'd like to see what we can do to put some trees back up there.
The sad thing about a lot of those strip jobs, though, is when you take that topsoil, you just got that clay, and it's not good soil.
Well, it's real rocky, and I'd have to learn a lot about it. Yeah, the topsoil, they put it somewhere, but you have to get rippers, these get these bulldozers that have rippers on them and loosen it all up. It's all impacted, you know. So that's the first thing. But they've had success growing some trees, even in that rocky soil. So, but there's a lot I'd have to learn about. But it's something I'm curious about, and see if we could get students involved.
Yeah. I mean, it'd be nice to kind of restore a lot of these forests, because I was watching a documentary the other day, and in the 1970s, we had close to 70% of the earth was covered in forest. That was land, and nowadays there's less than 45% about it that still have forest on it. So much of it is lost. Places like Sumatra and all that, they've just cleared it for
palm oil. They own those palm trees for palm oil. Yeah, but they said here that a squirrel could get on a tree in New England, go all the way to Mississippi without touching the ground much, you know. There was that much canopy. And they're having trouble now due to the climate change with, they get a lot of their lumber in Canada, British Columbia, and the beetle infestation is so great there. It's really drop in the amount of lumber supplies they can get.
And then you have IKEA helping with that problem too. They're pulling a lot of the trees from Romania and all that, and they're just clearing those forests illegally, and it's cheap furniture. You know, back in the day, we would make furniture last for 50, 75 years. Now it lasts for a year or two, and it's broken.
Oh, yeah.
That particle board, and you're just sapping the earth with trees all that life.
Yeah, well, there's still that, you know, you look around, there's still a lot of trees, but, it really, that's what I noticed when I came back from Ireland. The first thing I noticed when I got off the plane and drove down here, I was going through the Lehigh Valley up there in New York, Pennsylvania. And I just looked up and, I said, look at those trees. And I just thought about, first, I wouldn't call them settlers. They're kind of unsettlers. They unsettled the frontier. But those pioneers, it must have got to them, because if you came from Ireland and the place is denuded, and you came out, in New England and looked at those trees, you think, God, this is it. It'll never end. It seemed that way too.
Yeah. I mean, it looked like that,
your eyes would get big. You think, yeah.
Oh yeah.
I can. This is a place, And there was such a land grab. They just got intoxicated with land. How much of it there was, and there was just like Kentucky. That was a pure land grab. Daniel Boone was part of it, and but he was here, surveying, and he got tired of it. It was. They just had these patents that laid over top of each other. Conflict, because it was part of Virginia, and you had to go back to Virginia to establish a patent, but they just over each other, and Boone was called, just that short lifetime, Boone was called into so many court proceedings. He was a surveyor. He was just overwhelmed with agitation over people. They stole his land. He got hoodooed out of his land. When he saw a chance to leave, he took it. He went out west. He went out beyond the Mississippi. It's just amazing. They said what it did, it gave lawyers work for the next 100 years, to untangle all those boundaries. And some of them, they say from fence, big beech to fence, big oak, and that kind of thing. Some were laid out according to, things on the land,
you can just
rocks or something like that.
You just cut that tree down, remove that rock, and you extended your property line.
That's right. Oh,
I know my grandparents' land. It was originally purchased like right at the turn of the century, like 1900 or something like that. But there was a conflict with some coal companies and that sort of thing. Eventually, I know that I've seen like some of the records of like the deeds and all that stuff, and there was a lot of that confusing. Like, how could you ever tell we're on the road this line? property line
Yeah,
was
I
at.
know. It was very, very confusing.
Don't even get me started on the coal companies coming in taking our rocks. Those are our rocks.
Yeah.
Also, in your spare time, Randy, you like to help me on the farm, do some gardening. I certainly appreciate that. I know it's about time to do some trellising in the greenhouse of tomatoes.
Yeah, I've enjoyed that. It's really good to see because I thought it had gone. I thought it left, because we grew up with my dad. It was his garden, really. We kind of serfs, peasants on his garden. But everything was about the garden, I was right at the tail end of that, And then after I grew up, I didn't garden anymore, and neither did a whole lot of people. And that connection with the land, I didn't think it would ever come back. Mules, I think in 1952 when I was born, there's a picture of my brother. He was 4 or 5 on a mule with Grandpa. Grandpa never did drive a car, And they were there, the farm, the land, the chickens, everything with a connection to that, and the know-how. Yeah. So it's really good to see that. I did like our place out on the, what was that creek's name?
Punching.
Punching Florida, I think of. That boy is a pretty place, but it was nice to get hand in the soil. I think it's really regenerative to get your hand in, and it's. I think it's biologically, it helps your immune system be out in the soil and work in the soil. So that's been a really good thing for me. Been hard work. We need a lot more people out there, man. Yeah. It's just overwhelming.
Especially out on Punching.
Yeah, it was just
there was no hope of going anywhere for air conditioning or relief from that sun when you were out there.
But to keep up with it. That's beautiful bottomland, but it's hard to keep up with the number of people there. But I sure appreciated going out there and helping with the food, and to see, good food being produced again is really a blessing to see. I thought it left. But it's nice to see it coming back. Connection, to land.
Yeah, there's nothing I love more than going out and picking a tomato straight off the vine. That's my favorite.
Yeah.
Jordan just eats a whole 2-quart size thing of cherry tomatoes at a time.
Yeah, every morning. For a while there was every morning I'd eat a whole quart full. Corey hates them, so it's extra for me.
Well, we used to, when I was little, we had a garden, and of course, my dad wasn't a really good teacher. It was his garden. And I just remember one encounter, I'd go out, we'd be planting corn. I said, put it down here, Dad? Put it down. He said, well, how far away from? Put it down. He just kept repeating that line, agitated, about even trying to tell me anything about garden. So I just kind of weeded and. But I remember him in his old age. He had inner ear problems, and he was having a hard time standing up. And he'd be out in that garden with a rope tied to his waist in a tree, kind of leaning like he's leaning against the wind. It reminded me of somebody on a sailboat, leaning out, trying to garden with that tied up there. But so when we were little, there was a festival like here, came around town, and he'd give us tomatoes, real good tomatoes, and we had a little wagon, and we had them all sectioned off in this wagon, and we'd walk down the street selling tomatoes.
That's what we need to do, Corey.
Just walk down the streets of Hymen.
Yeah, I'm sure.
Maters. Got your maters.
Maters for sale.
That's what we did. And my brother, he would do the pitch, and I would pull the wagon.
See there, Corey, you could pull the wagon, and I'll do the pitch.
But we made enough to ride the tilt-a-whirl as many times as we want.
All right. Well, Randy, we appreciate you coming on the podcast today. It's been a wonderful conversation, and you're gonna close us out with a little song, I hear.
Let's see, what could I do here?
Maybe one of those original pieces that we've been hearing about.
Talking about cornbread.
I'd have to work on that one. It's been a while.
That's my favorite. I get stuck in my head every time I sing it.
Yeah, I should go back to that one. Just a little piece of this. Frog went a courting, he did ride. Rop stopped by Mr. Gambo, sword and pistol by his side. Rop stopped by Mr. Gambo, hemo, hamo, chemo, chimo, rowdy, rowdy, ray. Rop stopped periwinkle, flamadoodle, yellow booger. Rop stopped by Mr. Gambo. Kids love this. They love saying yellow booger. When can in your life can you be able to freely just holler yellow booger to somebody? We'd walk right up Miss Mouse's door. Rop dropped by Mr. Gambo, danced a little jig upon her floor. Rop dropped by Mr. Gambo, hemo, hamo, chemo, chimo, rowdy, rowdy, ray. Rop dropped periwinkle, flamadoodle, yellow booger. Rop dropped by Mr. Gambo. He put Miss Mouse upon his knee. Rop dropped by Mr. Gambo. He said, Miss Mouse, will you marry me? Rop stopped by Mr. Gambo, hemo, hamo, chemo, chimo, rowdy, rowdy, ray. Rop stopped periwinkle, flamadoodle, yellow booger. Rop stopped by Mr. Gambo. Without my Uncle Rat's consent, Rop stopped by Mr. Gambo. I wouldn't marry the president. Rop stopped by Mr. Gambo, hemo, hamo, chemo, chimo, rowdy, rowdy, ray. Rop strop periwinkle, flamadoodle, yellow booger. Rop strop by Mr. Gambo. Well, first come in was a little bitty flea. Rop strop by Mr. Gambo. Had a little fiddle upon his knee. Rop strop by Mr. Gambo. Next come in was a big old cow. Rop strop by Mr. Gambo. Tried to dance but she didn't know how. Rop strop by Mr. Gambo. Hemo, hamo, chemo, chimo, rowdy, rowdy, ray. Rop strop periwinkle, flamadoodle, yellow booger. Rop strop by Mr. Gambo. Oh, next come in was a big old snake. Rop strop by Mr. Gambo. Called right up and swallowed the cake. Rop strop by Mr. Gambo. Next come in was a big old moose. Rop strop by Mr. Gambo. Backed right in and cut one loose. Rop strop by Mr. Gambo. Hemo, hamo, chemo, chimo, rowdy, rowdy, ray. Rop strop periwinkle, flamadoodle, yellow booger. Rop strop by Mr. Gambo. Next come in was big tomcat. Rop strop by Mr. Gambo. Growled that frog and gobbled up the rat. Rop strop by Mr. Gambo. That is the end of him and her. Rop strop by Mr. Gambo. There won't be tadpoles covered with fur. Rop strop by Mr. Gambo. Hemo, hamo, chemo, chimo, rowdy, rowdy, ray. Rop strop periwinkle, flamadoodle, yellow booger. Rop strop by Mr. Gambo. All right.
Yellow booger!
Oh, are we doing the clap?
No.
Not. That's fine.
I was going to start off saying yellow booger, and you ruined it by clapping.
I think it's fine. I think we roll with this.
You do?
Let them know what's going on behind the scenes.
It's already gone too far behind
That's
now.
fine, Corey. Let's let it go. This is the banter we're looking for.
Okay. Well, you got the banter. So we appreciate Randy for coming on the podcast, and that was such an enjoyable episode. Mycelium. We had such a broad discussion.
Yeah, I don't even know what we talked about really, but I guess it's because it's been 3 days.
Yeah. We are a little bit behind schedule here on recording the second part. I was full ready to record it that day, but there was like 10 people in here, and I couldn't work up the gumption to just say, "Hey, I need you to leave." So
You should have just asked me, Corey. I didn't know. I thought we were just putting it off. What was happening? I don't even know.
I don't know. People were in here talking. I don't remember what we were talking about. But anyway, yeah, it's just me being socially awkward and not standing up for myself and that sort of thing. But anyway, yeah, we're here about 3 days later now, and I know what was talked about because I edited the podcast till 3 a.m. last night, and I know what was talked about because I had to relive it, and it was a fun reliving.
Okay, tell us about it. Then.
I listened to the song, and just smile every time Randy says, "Yellow booger,
Yellow booger.
yellow booger."
God, Sarah Kate needs to get on that, and I hope she's listening because this is a call to arms for Sarah Kate to get on that Yellow Booger song. I've told her 4 or 5 times already.
Yeah.
I want it.
Yeah. I could imagine the kids like that song. But yeah, Randy is a very knowledgeable man and very broad in his thoughts. And
he's everything I aspire
intellectual
to be.
life. Yes.
I just wish he didn't shave his mustache because now I feel like I'm alone in the ocean.
Well, you are alone. Your mustache. Because I can't grow one, so I'm just this little baby face for the rest of my life.
See, Corey, you just got to go through a hard time, and that's when the mustache grows.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Well, if it gets any harder than what I've already been through, I don't want to know what it takes to get that mustache.
Oh, it's some dark times, son.
Okay. As always, we want to fill you all in on what is happening here at the Hymen Settlement School. Give us some announcements and upcoming events. And our next Agrilachia will be on April 8th at 7 p.m. And our guest that night will be Alan Muskat. And he'll be talking about foraging, which we talked about on this podcast with Randy.
Get that fit right in.
In particular, he'll be talking about morels, or as we call them here, dryland fish, and ramps, which should be growing here pretty soon. You might even find some morels right now. We need to go hunting for them, Jordan.
Ooh, boy. I'm always down for a hike.
Quilts created by 6th through 12th grade students in our virtual after-school quilt class will be on display at the Appalachian Artisan Center from April 9th through the 24th as part of their ongoing Quilt in the Gallery.
And we are also collaborating with the Appalachian Artisan Center to put together an art show we are calling Common Threads. This intergenerational gallery show will feature pieces handcrafted by 6th through 12th grade students enrolled in our virtual embroidery, knitting, and crocheting classes, as well as work from local and regional fiber artists. Common Threads is on display at the Appalachian Artisan Center from April 30th through May 22nd. That was a mouthful.
And our Pick and Bow Variety Show will be broadcast live on the Hymen Settlement School Facebook page at 5 p.m. on April 28th. For the past 12 weeks, students from Knott County and surrounding counties have been learning how to play the fiddle, banjo, mandolin, guitar, dulcimer, and, like my little girl, ukulele. Come cheer them on and help us celebrate everything they've accomplished this semester as they perform and showcase their talents.
And our last announcement, we will be teaching a variety of art classes as part of our 5-week dyslexia summer school. Students will be learning how to take photographs, paint, and draw, tell traditional stories, Appalachian stories, and lots more. If you would like to help out, visit us on our Amazon wish list and donate some of the art supplies that we will be handing out to students.
And as always, we want to recognize anyone in the past couple of weeks who has donated to the Hymen Settlement School and express our deep and sincere gratitude to them.
We love them.
We love them very much. And first off, we want to recognize Mary Ann Worthington and Rose Ann Goss.
We would also like to recognize the Georgia State Society of DAR for presenting us with $2,277, which they presented to us at the school's luncheon. And we would also like to recognize the Texas State Society DAR, which donated $5,000 in funds to I'm going to try again because that sentence is terrible.
Sorry.
It's real bad, Corey. Texas State Society DAR donated $5,000 and donated some items that were swept away during the recent flooding.
And we also want to recognize everyone of the DAR who has donated to our seed shower over the past several months. We get probably 5 or 10 packages a day of seeds coming in.
There's plenty
in the mail. So yeah, we are stocked up on seeds for the year. Our Grow Up members will greatly appreciate that, and we appreciate all of you for donating. And as always, we appreciate everyone who has tuned in to the podcast this week. We hope you enjoyed it. And my name is Corey Terry.
And I'm Jordan Collins.
And we'll catch you next time.
The HindmanCast is brought to you by the faithful and generous supporters of the Hyndman Settlement School. For over 100 years, we've been celebrating heritage and changing lives in Central Appalachia. If you're interested in supporting the work of Hyndman Settlement School, you can go to our website at www.hyman.org, or you can follow us on Facebook and Instagram at the handle @HyndmanSchool.